in a few minutes talking about the Aron, the Ark, because first of all, the Aron is central to the Mishkan. It's the central piece of furniture, and also we just built a new Aron Kodesh for our yeshiva, and we know that everything is a reflection of the Mishkan. We have an Aron Kodesh in the Mishkan. So we have an Aron in synagogues and yeshivos. We have a menorah in the Mishkan. Never it's a custom also to have lights, a ner tamid in synagogues and yeshivas, and also to light Shabbos candles, to light the Chanukiah. It's a custom also to have we had a table in the Mishkan in the base of Mikdash, and that reflects the table that we have that we sit at and that we eat at, and the altar also represents the tables where we study Torah. So everything we have in our modern day spiritual architecture is a reflection of the architecture of the sanctuary, and very clearly the Ark was the center of it. So I wanted to spend a few moments studying the spiritual significance of the Aron that Hashem told Moshe to build in the Mishkan. So let's look at this Aron. The Aron, what do we say about this Aron? It says as follows: V'asu Aron atzei shitim. You shall make the ark out of acacia wood. How did they get this acacia wood? Where did it come from? Yaakov Avinu had the foresight, our ancestor Jacob, our patriarch Jacob. He had the foresight before he even traveled down to Egypt. He had the foresight to bring the acacia wood down with him from Canaan and plant it in Egypt, so that the Bnei Israel would know to take it with them when they were leaving. Meaning to say, he did this from the outset. He said that you're temporary in this place because eventually we're going to have a sanctuary and we're going to need this special wood for it. And the ark will be made out of acacia wood. Chatzi arko, amatayim v'chetzi arko, 2.5 amos long, ama v'chetzi rachbo, 1.5 amos wide, and 1.5 amos long. V'tzipisa uso zahav tahor, and you shall cover this ark with gold. Mibayit u'michutz tisapenu. You shall cover the ark with gold. From the outside and the inside you shall cover it. And you shall make around it a crown. A sisa of zer zahav saviv, a crown. Rashi tells us what's going on here because it's not really clear from the text. But Rashi tells us what's going on is not that you have a wooden box made out of acacia wood, which is just plated with gold on the inside and the outside. That's not what's going on. What's going on is you had 3 boxes, and there was an inner box which was made of gold, and into that inner box went a wooden box, and into that wooden box went another golden box. And there was no cover that was built attached to the boxes, but instead you had to put we'll see a crown around it, and on top of the boxes was going to be placed a cover called the kaporet. On top of all 3 boxes was placed this kaporet. And then you should pour v'yatzaktalo, you pour 4 rings of gold, and you place them on the pamotav, which Rashi tells us are the sides of the Aron, and 2 rings on each side, and 2 rings on the other side, and you shall put the poles of the acacia wood covered with gold, and you put them into these rings. And ve'iveta tabadim b'tabaos, and you shall place the rings into the poles into the rings on the sides of the Aron, and they were used to carry the ark. Of course, they weren't really used to carry the ark. First of all, the ark was way too heavy to carry. Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan calculates that the ark itself weighed, just the cover for the ark weighed 2 tons. And we know that the Aron no say it's asma. The ark really carried itself. So it's symbolic. And we'll talk about the symbolism in a moment of every single piece and element of this ark. But it says, in the rings of the ark will be the poles. They cannot be moved from the ark forever. The poles had to always remain in the ark. And you shall place into the ark, you shall place into the ark the testimony, the luchot, the testimony that I will give to you. So this is the verses of the ark. But before we stop with the ark, because there's still a few more elements which we didn't get into. And what are those elements? And then after we go over the psukim, I just want to share with you what the Baal Turim says and some of the symbolism, the elements that speak to me the most. You shall place a kaporet, a cover of gold, that's 2.5 amos long, 1.5 amos wide. But interestingly, it's missing the key ingredient. It doesn't say how thick it's supposed to be. It doesn't say how thick it's supposed to be. So Rashi tells us it's supposed to be a tefach thick, which is 3 inches thick, which is an enormous amount of gold. That's why Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan of blessed memory says it weighed 2 tons. And you shall place 2 kruvim that are beaten out of gold. From one piece of gold, you place them on the 2 ends of the kaporet, and you make 1 kruv on this side and 1 kruv on that side, and on either side. And the kruvim will spread their wings above. They'll spread their wings. What is the kruvim? The kruvim, the Talmud tells us, is kirabia, like the face of a baby. The Gemara in Yuma tells us that the kruvim had the faces of babies, and they'll spread their wings above over the ark, facing each other, and then you place the cover on the ark from above, and into the ark you shall place the edut. The edut is another word for the tablets that I will give to you. And I will make myself known to you there. The verse says, "V'no'adati l'fasham v'dibarti itcha mi'al kapores min shnei kruvim asher Aron ha'edut et kol asher atzavel otcha al b'nei Yisrael." So God says, I will speak to you there. I'll make myself known to you there, and I'll speak to you from on top of the kaporet, between the 2 kruvim. So the 2 kruvim are facing each other with their wings spread out, and there's a hairbreadth space in between the wings. And that's directly above the ark. And it's at that exact space that God appears to talk to the Bnei Yisrael and to reveal his commandments. And that's telling us that this is the holiest place on earth. This place is the holiest place on earth. This place in between the 2 kruvim, right on top, in the center of the ark. So first of all, I wanted to just share what the Baal Turim has to say about this, and then go into the parts that I found to be the most symbolic for me, that spoke to me the most. Hold on, I see that there are some questions, so let me just. So the Baal Turim says, the Baal Turim, wait, Joyce, were you trying to say something?
No, I just remember in my studies that God actually says, okay, you can come back now. So
that's later on. That's the second commandments.
I don't know if it was maybe last week or this week it was in Mishpatim where he invites Moses to come back up. Moses goes many times. You can tell me how many times, I don't remember, but it's not just one trip, it's multiple trips. But after this, pyrotechnics, Moshe goes back down and God says, we'll come back up. And that's when the 40 days and 40 nights occurs.
Okay, so let me go over the chronology one more time. Let me go over the chronology. Thanks. So basically, there's different versions of the chronology, but the way Rashi explains it, the way also the Gemara has it, is that Moshe goes up the mountain on the 6th of Sivan, and he receives, and God speaks the 10 commandments. 40 days later, the children of Israel, on the 17th of Tammuz, or they're worshiping the golden calf. Moshe goes down and breaks the tablets. Moshe then goes up the next day, the mountain, for another 40 days and asks God to forgive the Jewish people because God wanted to destroy the Jewish people. Moshe comes down and God does like a partial forgiveness. And Moshe goes down on the 29th of Av. And then God says on Rosh Chodesh Elul, go up and bring the stones to make for yourself a second set of tablets. And Moshe goes up for the third time up the mountain, and each time he goes up for 40 days and 40 nights. And this time God gives him a complete forgiveness and he comes down on Yom Kippur. And those are the 3 times Moshe goes up. But it doesn't actually, unless I'm missing it, never actually states at what point when Moshe Rabbeinu was up in the mountain did he actually get the physical tablets. Right? And if he got the physical tablets beforehand, where was he holding them or keeping them while he was up on the mountain? So I always assumed that he got the physical tablets from God before he went down, right before he went down the mountain, and then he goes down the mountain and he breaks the tablets. But it's a little bit ambiguous exactly at what point he got the physical tablets. So going back to the Baal HaTurim, I want to just point out a few things from the Baal HaTurim. The Baal HaTurim says that the Aron, the name Aron, we're talking about an Aron Kodesh. The name Aron is the letters of Oran, their light. The name Aron represents their light. Because in the ark, Sheyeshba, in this ark, is the light of Israel. Sheyeshba Oran Shal Yisrael. In this light is the light of Israel. The Otiot Norah, and also has the letters of Norah, awesome. For it is like a consuming fire. Also, we know that the Talmud in Megillah 16b says that for the Jews there was light, and light equals Torah. So Ora equals Torah. And so that's what it says. Aron represents both light and Torah. And we know that the very first words God said are, let there be light. And so too, when Bezalel built the Mishkan, he recognized that just as Hashem began the creation, says the Shemos Rabbah, just as God began the creation of the world with Yihi Or, so should the first vessel for the building of the Mishkan be the Aron, because it represents light. Okay, so now we also say it was awesome because we know that there was a tremendous amount of holiness associated with the Aron, that you weren't allowed to touch the Aron, and if you tried to carry it, we know from the book of Shmuel that Uzzah was killed because he tried to touch the ark, and also the Plishtim, when they captured the ark, they were smitten with disease. So we know that the ark represented awesomeness and also light of the Torah. Now the Baal HaTurim tells us the Aron in the gematria, the numerical value is Nezer, represents crown. Sheketer Torah Ola al kol aktarim. We know that there is the crown of Malchus, of kingship, the crown of Kahuna. These are incredibly prestigious crowns, but the most important crown of all is the crown of Torah. That's the one that cannot be inherited. Kahuna is for sure inherited. Kings is also inherited, but the crown of Torah cannot be inherited. But the crown of Torah is the highest crown. And that's why it states about, says the Baal HaTurim, Asita alav zer zahav, you shall make on the ark a crown of gold. And by the Shulchan, it just says Vasita lo, just you shall make a crown for it. But by the ark, it says you'll make a crown above it, to tell us that the crown of the Torah goes above all the other crowns. Therefore, it says therefore it says alav. And the commentary to the Baal HaTurim notes that in the Baal HaTurims, we don't really look at the Masoretic notes anymore, but in time of the Baal HaTurim, it says there was a Masoretic note, and it said, Alav leis usha'arav asiselo v'simona de Aron kater Torah al gabehen, which means that the word alav upon it does not appear elsewhere connected to the word crown, but the others say lo. And then the way to remember it is that of the ark, the crown of the Torah is above them. And this tells us that all of us, that the highest levels, the highest spiritual level we can achieve is not the crown of being a king or the crown of being a Kohen, but the crown of having Torah, the crown of having Torah in our life. That's what the Baal HaTurim says. And then the next verse says, Amatayim v'chetzi arko, 2.5 amos long, 1.5 amos wide, and 1.5 amos tall. And this is a beautiful teaching. He says, Kol midosaf hayu shvuros b'chatzei amos. L'hamed shekol mi shelomed Torah tzarich la'ashper l'shaber u'la'ashpil atzmo. It says, why are all the measurements of the ark given in half measures? Nothing is whole. It's not 2 amos long or 3 amos long. It's 2.5 amos long, 1.5 amos wide instead of 1 amos or 2 amos wide, and 1.5 amos tall. It's to tell us that anyone who studies Torah needs to be humble. Needs to humble oneself. That's why who was the greatest Torah scholar of all? Moshe Rabbeinu. And about Moses, we're told he was the most humble man on the face of the earth. So to be a Torah scholar, one needs to be humble. And that's why we have this concept of the half measures, that a person needs to be willing to break oneself, to lower oneself, with humility in order to fully acquire the Torah, to realize one's inadequacy. This is the Baal HaTurim. Then the Baal HaTurim says, Zahav tahor mibayit u'michutz, that there is pure gold outside and inside. So remember, the ark was three boxes. The most inner box was gold, then wooden, and then gold. So the Baal HaTurim says that this teaches us that when you combine the letter bet with gold, with the numerical value of gold, you get the numerical value of tahor mibayit u'michutz, that is pure from within and without, which is a total of 824. And that equals hinei hachacham yeh toho kubaro, that a Torah scholar has to have his inside is like his outside. So that's the symbolism of the gold of the ark being the most inner and the most outer, that a Torah scholar has to be consistent on the inside and the outside, that we should be toho kubaro. Our inside must be like our outside must be like our inside. Again, easier said than done, but that's what he states. And then he says, what does the Baal HaTurim say about the kruvim? He says, Shnayim kruvim upnehim ish elachav. He says, the Baal HaTurim says, this symbolizes shnei chaverim shenosim v'notnim b'divrei Torah. This is like a chavruta. There's what's going on above the Aron Kodesh. 2 friends engaged in Torah study. 2 friends face to face discussing the Torah. That's what it is. Joyce, that's what it is. 2 friends right above the ark engaging in Torah study. And hold on one second. I see that there's a question. I'll pause it for a moment. So the Baal HaTurim says, what do we say about the word kruvim? He says the kruvim is kiravia, like a youth. That's what the Gemara in Sukkah tells us. But it's not the only way to understand it. I'll share that in a moment. And the Baal HaTurim says, Kinar Yisrael va'o ha vehu, as it states in Hosea chapter 11, verse 1, because when Israel was a youth, I loved him. So therefore, according to this approach, we have to say that what's above the ark, the purity of children. Nothing is as pure as a child. The child doesn't understand a lot of the cynicism, the sarcasm, the stuff that we all grow into as we get older, which is no good. The child doesn't have that. So that's what represents that if we want to have the ark in our lives, we need to have this purity. But there's another approach in the Talmud that the Kruvim represents something else. That one represents a male and one represents a female. And this is telling us a very, very different approach that to the Kruvim, that they don't represent the tamimus of a child, but they represent the energy of love. That the energy of love between them, like pure love between a man and a woman. That's what's represented by the Kruvim, and that's the way to come closest to Hashem. So that's another element of the Kruvim. And the Talmud also tells us that when the Jewish people are serving the will of Hashem, then the two Kruvim are embracing. It also represents this idea of the love of a husband and wife. But when the Jewish people grow distant from God, the Kruvim turn their back to each other. So, okay, so these are some of the aspects of the Kruvim. The Baal Turim tells us something else about the Kruvim. He says, "You shall make above the ark shnei kruvim." What does he say? He says the gematria of the phrase shnei kruvim is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Shahayu sham kedei laschir zchut avot. The kruvim were there to remind us of the merit of the patriarchs. And Moshe and the two kruvim represented Shnei Kruvim Moshe Hare Gimel. That represents 3. Keneged Gimel Avot, corresponding to the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Mibein Shnei HaKruvim, coming between the two Kruvim, that's the Rashi Tevos of Moshe. That's spelled out Moshe's name. So Moshe is being supported by the two Kruvim, and that's a reminder that Moshe was coming with the Kruvim of the patriarchs. Also, we know that the other place the Kruvim appears is outside the Garden of Eden. They're protecting the Garden of Eden. Wanted to say also the idea. There are several ideas that really speak to me in the Aron, which we didn't touch on. So I wanted to just mention a few of them. So first of all, we said, what are you supposed to place into the luchot? It says that what do you place into the luchot? The el Aron titain at ha'edut asher etain lecha. Into the ark you shall place the edut that I will give to you. But the Talmud tells us that it wasn't just the edut. Rashi says is a reference to the tablets, but the Talmud says it's not just the tablets. The luchot and the shivrei luchot are munachim ba'aron. The tablets and also the broken tablets were placed in the Aron. Not just the tablets, but also the broken tablets were placed in the Aron. What's the significance of the broken tablets being placed in the Aron? What's the significance of that? To my mind, this speaks to a very powerful spiritual idea. I'm happy to. The idea is, as we were saying, that just because they're broken, they don't lose their holiness. And I think that's absolutely true. But even more than that, what's the symbolism of that? Symbolism of that is twofold. That to me, it speaks of sometimes there's Torah scholars who were brilliant in their day and age, and then they just they break down either intellectually or spiritually. Sometimes they even sin. They become shadows of what they were. But does that mean they lose their holiness? So it means we have to retain, as we try to remember the holiest parts of our world, that sometimes the things that are broken still need to be retained within the Aron Kodesh, that even the broken tablets are contained within the Aron Kodesh. And that's one aspect of it, that even when somebody breaks down, we still keep them in the Aron Kodesh. But also another aspect, very, very powerful spiritual aspect, is that sometimes in order to be inside an Aron Kodesh, you need to be broken. You need to have gone through brokenness. Nobody wishes that upon that, but sometimes it's the person who has gone through the most brokenness, who has achieved the highest levels of holiness because of what they've experienced in life. This is the broken tablets are placed into the ark. The person, like right now, we're living in Israel. We're living at a time we see in Israel. How much brokenness is there right now? How many families are broken? But we're reminded that the broken tablets are the ones that are also placed into the ark. And that's one idea. And I'm sure that if you think about that, the symbolism of it, you will come up with your own symbolism. But then I wanted to share another aspect here that spoke to me, and that is the idea that there were poles that were placed on the Aron, that they were placed into the rings of the Aron. Now these poles, well, it says Vasita badei atzei shitim v'tzipita otam zahav. And then you place the poles inside the rings. Lo yasuru mimenu. They cannot be removed from the rings. And Rashi says li'olam, forever. They were never allowed to be removed from the rings. Now let's just go back and say, remember we said earlier that nobody was allowed to really carry the ark, because if you thought that you were carrying the ark, A, it was physically impossible, it weighed 2 tons, and B, or weighed more than 2 tons, and B, when Uzzah stuck out his hand to try and support the ark, he was struck down and died, because the Aron no seis atzma, the ark carried itself. So the poles were purely symbolic. And what's the point of the symbolism? The poles were never allowed to be removed. They were never allowed to be removed. Wherever the ark went, the poles had to be there. So what's the significance? So let's take another aspect of the ark. Only the ark of all the utensils was the only one that left the space of the sanctuary. When they went into battle, they took the ark with them. That's why some say it was a different ark, but the concept of the ark was the only utensil that was specifically supposed to go outside. The ark is the only one that we hear about it traveling. Vayhi ben so Aron, when the ark would travel. Only the ark traveled. None of the other utensils are we told that they specifically traveled. So what's the significance of that? The significance of that is that the ark represents Torah. And wherever a Jew goes, the Torah must go with the Jew. The Torah must go with the Jew. Wherever we go. Now it can mean on a national level, when the Jew goes into exile, and the Jew is exiled from the land of Canaan, goes to Babylon, goes to Poland, goes to France, goes to Yemen, goes to Morocco, goes to wherever the Jew goes, to Volozhin, the Torah goes with the Jew. The poles of the Torah are never supposed to be removed from the ark. The ark has to be ready to travel with us wherever we go. But also, it's not just on a national level, but for each of us as individuals, the message is very straightforward as well. Wherever we go in our life, not everybody has the luxury of sitting in a yeshiva all day long and studying the Torah. Not all of us have that luxury in life. So everybody else has to be prepared wherever we go, whether we go to our office or whether we go to visit our relatives or wherever we go on a vacation, wherever we go. The Torah has to travel with us. The Torah can never be separated from us, no matter where we go. That's the symbolism, that the poles of the Torah never leave. They never leave. The Torah must travel with us. So these are just some of the symbolisms of the Torah. These are just some of the symbolisms of the Ark that really speak to me. And in that context, I'm going to think about this a lot as we use our own Kodesh. Okay, let me just, let me stop here.